My name is Laura. I am 29 years old. I live in a small town with my husband, Mark. We have been married for 3 years. When I met Mark, he was the kindest man I had ever known. He made me laugh. He listened to me. He always asked how my day was and cared about my answer. Before we got married, Mark would bring me flowers every week. We went for long walks in the park. We talked about our dreams for the future. He told me he wanted to build a small house for us one day. He said he wanted 2 children, maybe 3. He wanted to travel with me and see the world. I loved how he looked at me as if I was the only person in the room. I felt safe with him. I believed we would always be happy together. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes without any doubt in my heart. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. My parents cried with joy. Mark held my hand tightly during the ceremony. He whispered, "I will love you forever." I believed every word. That day, I thought nothing could break us. The first months after our wedding were sweet. We cooked together in the evenings. We watched movies on the weekends. Sometimes we stayed up late, just talking and laughing. I thought, this is what love should be. But slowly, things began to change. At first, I didn't notice. Mark started coming home later than usual. He said he was busy at work. He didn't ask me about my day anymore. When I told him something important, he only said, "Okay," and looked at his phone. I tried to remind myself that maybe he was just tired. I told myself not to worry, but deep inside, I felt something was different. The man who once held me close now seemed far away, even when we were in the same room. One evening, I cooked his favorite dinner, roast chicken with potatoes. I waited for him to come home. The food became cold on the table. He arrived almost 2 hours late. I smiled and said, "I made your favorite." He glanced at the food and said, "I already ate." Then he went to his room without another word. I sat at the table, my hands resting on my lap. I could hear him moving around in the other room. I felt a heavy weight in my chest. I wanted to ask, what happened to us? But I stayed silent. Over the next weeks, the distance grew. We stopped going for walks. We stopped talking about the future. When I tried to ask him if something was wrong, he said, "I'm fine. Don't make a big deal out of nothing." One Saturday, I woke up early and suggested we go to the park. He said he had things to do. He spent the whole day in the garage, fixing something on his car. I spent the day alone, feeling like a guest in my own marriage. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about the man I had married and the man lying next to me now. They felt like 2 different people. I didn't know when the change happened, but I knew it was real. Still, I tried to hold on to hope. I made an effort to plan nice things for us to do together. I suggested dinner at his favorite restaurant. He said he was too tired. I bought tickets to see a movie he once said he wanted to watch. He said maybe next time. Each no felt like a small crack in my heart. One evening, I decided to wait for him in the living room. I wanted to talk. I waited and waited, the clock ticking loudly in the quiet house. When he finally came home, he looked surprised to see me awake. I asked if we could talk. He sighed and said, "I'm tired, Laura." "Can this wait?" I said. "It's already been waiting." He looked at me for a moment, then walked past me to the bedroom. That night, I cried quietly so he wouldn't hear me. I didn't want him to think I was weak, but the truth was, I felt lonely in my own marriage. I missed the man who once couldn't stop holding my hand. I missed the way he used to look at me like I was his world. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. Mark had already left for work. On the kitchen table was a note that said, "Have a good day." I stared at the words for a long time. It was polite, but it didn't feel warm. I wondered if that was all our marriage would be now, short notes and cold dinners. I didn't want to believe that the man I loved was gone, but I could no longer ignore the truth. Something had changed, and I didn't know if we could ever go back to the way we were. The days passed slowly. Each morning, I woke up and hoped something would feel different. I hoped Mark would look at me with the same warmth he used to have, but every day felt the same. We lived in the same house, but we were living in two different worlds. I started to notice small things. When I spoke to him, he often kept his eyes on the television or his phone. When I laughed, he didn't join in. Sometimes I would tell him about something exciting at work, but his only answer was, "That's nice." It felt like my words no longer mattered to him. One evening, I decided I couldn't stay quiet anymore. He was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. I sat down next to him and said, "Mark, can we talk?" He didn't look up right away. "About what?" he asked. "About us," I said softly. "You've been distant. You don't talk to me the way you used to. I feel like you're far away, even when you're right here." He sighed. "Laura, I'm just tired from work. You're reading too much into it." His words stung. "It's not just about work," I said. "It's been months. You've changed." He put his phone down and finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, but they weren't angry. "People change, Laura. We can't always be the same as we were in the beginning." I didn't know what to say. I understood that life was different after marriage, but I didn't think love should fade this quickly. I looked at him, searching for the man who used to make me feel like I was the most important person in his life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversation in my head. His words, "People change," felt like a wall between us. I wondered if he meant that he no longer loved me the same way. The next weekend, I tried again to bring us closer. I suggested a short trip to the countryside, a place we had once visited when we were dating. He said he was too busy. I offered to help him with the things he needed to do, but he shook his head. Instead, he spent the whole weekend fixing things around the house while I stayed in the kitchen, cooking meals that went half-eaten. I felt invisible. On Sunday evening, I called my mother. I didn't tell her everything, but she could hear the sadness in my voice. "Laura, marriage is not always easy," she said gently. "Sometimes people drift apart because they stop trying. You must decide if you are willing to fight for him." Her words stayed with me. That night, I sat at the dining table after Mark went to bed. I thought about our wedding day, about his promise to love me forever. I wondered if he remembered it. The following week, I noticed something new. Mark was spending more time on his phone, often smiling at messages he didn't share with me. When I asked who he was talking to, he said, "Just a friend from work." I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but my heart was uneasy. Was this the reason he had been so distant? I didn't want to believe it, but the thought wouldn't leave my mind. One evening, I came home early from work. I found him sitting in the living room, typing quickly on his phone. When he saw me, he put it face down on the table. "You're home early," he said with a small smile. "Yes," I replied. I thought we could have dinner together." We ate, but I could feel the silence between us. It was heavy and uncomfortable. I tried to start conversations, but each one ended with short answers. After dinner, I went to our bedroom and sat on the bed, my eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how much longer I could live like this, waiting for the man I married to come back, while feeling more alone each day. That night, I made a decision. I would find out the truth about what was happening. If there was something he was hiding, I needed to know. If it was just stress, we could work through it. But if his heart was no longer with me, I had to face that reality. As I turned off the light and lay down, I stared at the dark ceiling. My marriage was no longer the safe place it once was. Something had to change. The next morning, I woke up early. Mark was still asleep. I looked at him and tried to remember the man I first fell in love with. His face was the same, but the feeling between us was different. I wanted to believe that everything could go back to the way it was, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. When he left for work, I stayed at home. I had the day off, but I couldn't relax. My mind kept going back to the way he hid his phone from me. I had never been the kind of wife to check my husband's phone, but now I felt a pull to know the truth. That afternoon, I went to the small cafe near his office. I told myself I was just there to have coffee, but in reality, I wanted to see him. I sat near the window, sipping tea, and waited. An hour later, I saw him walking toward the cafe. He wasn't alone. A woman was walking beside him. She had long brown hair and wore a bright red coat. They were talking and laughing. He looked at her the way he used to look at me. My heart sank. I froze in my seat, unsure if I should hide or go outside. They didn't come in. They stood near the corner, still talking. I watched as he touched her arm lightly, smiling. I felt a pain in my chest, sharp and heavy. I told myself they could just be friends from work, but the way he looked at her didn't feel like friendship. When I got home, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My mind was full of questions. Should I ask him directly? Should I wait and see if he tells me? Or should I pretend I didn't see anything? That evening, when he came home, I tried to act normal. He smiled faintly and said, "How was your day?" I forced a smile and said, "It was fine." I wanted to tell him I saw him, but my voice didn't work. Days passed, but the image of him with that woman stayed in my mind. Every time he smiled at his phone, I thought of her. Every time he came home late, I wondered if he had been with her. One night, I couldn't keep it inside anymore. "Mark," I said, as we were sitting in the living room, "who is the woman you've been spending time with?" His face changed. "What woman?" he asked. "The one in the red coat. I saw you with her near your office." He looked away for a moment, then back at me. "She's just a friend from work. You're imagining things." "I'm not imagining things," I said quietly. "I saw the way you looked at her." He stood up, running a hand through his hair. "Laura, I'm tired of this. You're making a big deal out of nothing." His voice was calm, but I could feel the wall between us growing higher. I didn't want to fight, but I also didn't want to live in doubt. That night, we went to bed without speaking. I lay there in the dark, wondering if my marriage was slipping away and I was powerless to stop it. The next morning, we barely spoke. He drank his coffee in silence and left the house without even saying goodbye. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at his empty cup. I felt like I was living with a stranger. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned the house, did the laundry, and prepared dinner. But no matter what I did, the same thoughts kept coming back. Who was that woman? Why hadn't he told me about her? And why did his eyes look so alive when he was with her, while they looked so cold when he was with me? That afternoon, Sophie called me. "You sound different," she said. I told her about seeing Mark with the woman in the red coat. Sophie was quiet for a moment, then said, "Laura, you need to be ready for any answer. If you ask him again, he might finally tell you the truth and it may hurt." "I just want honesty," I said, "even if it hurts." That evening, Mark came home late again. His hair was slightly messy, and he smelled faintly of a perfume I didn't recognize. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. "How was your day?" I asked. "Busy," he replied, hanging his jacket. "Did you see your friend today?" I asked carefully. He froze for a second, then looked at me. "Laura, please stop. You're making me feel like I'm being accused of something I didn't do." "Then tell me the truth," I said. "Who is she really?" He sighed and sat down. "Her name is Claire. We work together. That's all." "That's all?" I asked, searching his face for any sign of a lie. "Yes," he said firmly, but his eyes shifted away from mine. We ate dinner in silence. He seemed relaxed, but I can feel the tension in the air. Every clink of the fork on the plate felt loud. I wanted to believe him, but my heart didn't. After he went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. I replayed the last few months in my mind. His late nights, the phone always in his hand, the way he no longer looked at me. It all fit together too well. The next day, I decided I needed proof before I confronted him again. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to accuse him without knowing. I told myself it wasn't about spying. It was about protecting my heart. That evening, I noticed he left his phone on the coffee table when he went to take a shower. My hands shook as I picked it up. My heart raced so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I opened his messages. Most were work-related, but then I saw a thread with the name Claire. My chest tightened. The most recent message from her read, "Thank you for today. I can't stop thinking about you." My stomach dropped. I scrolled up and saw more messages, jokes, shared pictures, and late-night conversations. One message from Mark said, "I wish I could see you more often." I put the phone back exactly where it was. My hands felt cold. My legs felt weak. The truth was right in front of me, and it hurt more than I imagined. When Mark came out of the shower, he smiled faintly and said, "What are you watching?" As if nothing had happened. I looked at him, feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal. In that moment, I knew part 4 of my life was coming. One where I would have to decide whether to fight for my marriage or walk away. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my back to Mark, staring at the dark wall. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages from Claire. The words played in my mind over and over again. By morning, my decision was clear. I could not keep pretending. I had to talk to him, and I had to do it today. When he came into the kitchen, I was already there, holding a cup of coffee. "We need to talk," I said. He looked surprised. "Right now?" "Yes," I replied. "Sit down." He sat across from me. I took a deep breath and said, "I saw the messages between you and Claire." His face went pale. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then he rubbed his forehead and whispered, "Laura, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I said firmly. "You've been hiding something from me for months. You've been giving her the attention you used to give me. You've been letting our marriage fade while you smiled at your phone." He sighed heavily. "I didn't mean for it to happen. We started as friends. I was stressed at work, and she listened. We just connected." I felt my chest tighten. "And you couldn't talk to your own wife?" He looked down at the table. "I don't know. Maybe I thought you wouldn't understand." A tear slid down my cheek, but my voice stayed steady. "I was your wife, Mark. My job was to understand you, but you didn't even give me the chance." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I'm sorry, Laura," he said softly. "It was a mistake. I can stop seeing her. We can fix this." I shook my head slowly. "You can't just erase months of distance with one promise. You made a choice to let someone else into your heart, and in doing that, you pushed me out." The room was silent except for the sound of the clock ticking. I looked at him, really looked, and realized something painful. This was not the man I married. That man made me feel safe. This one made me feel alone. "I can't stay like this," I said finally. "If you truly want to save our marriage, it will take more than words. It will take effort. It will take time. And it will take trust. Something you've broken." He nodded slowly, his eyes wet. "I'll do anything," he said. I stood up. "Then start by being honest with yourself about why this happened. I need space to think. I'm going to stay with my mother for a while." I packed a small bag. Mark didn't stop me. He just stood by the door, watching as I left. When I arrived at my mother's house, I felt both heavy and light. Heavy from the pain, but light from finally facing the truth. I didn't know what the future would hold. Maybe we would fix our marriage, or maybe we wouldn't. But I knew one thing for sure. I deserved to be loved by someone who still looked at me the way Mark once did. And if that man was gone forever, then I would find the strength to let him go.